Welcome back friends, and we are on grammar. So, let me start with an example. If I ask you that I asked John if the class is on tomorrow, or if there is going to be a class tomorrow. Now, I asked someone something. Do you think this sentence would end with a full stop or with a question mark? Think about it. I asked Dr. John if there would be a class tomorrow. Is this sentence going to end with, will this sentence end with a question mark or with a full stop? That is the question. So, we will continue with our grammar, and today's topics are punctuations and types of sentences, simple sentence, compound sentence and complex sentences. So, our objectives would be to have some kind of familiarity with punctuations, particularly full stop, comma, semicolon, colon and question mark. We are also going to get introduced to three major types of sentences: simple, compound and complex. We will also do some phrasal verbs, some exercises related to phrasal verbs. So, let me start with what is a phrasal verb. Now, something takes off, or something has to be looked in, or something has to be, or something is, or someone is looked down upon. All these are phrasal verbs. There is a difference between look up and look into. There is a difference between take up and take in, or take off and take in. There is a difference between let us say put off and put up. You are put up with someone, you are put off with someone, or put off by someone. So, what are phrasal verbs, and what do they bring to the table where language is concerned in business communication? Because business English of course is of a higher level, of a higher order as compared to other genres. Okay. So, in business English you are not just dealing with a specific domain, but business English could be related to several areas: entrepreneurship, hotel industry, and things that deal with any aspect of communication, particularly with in business situations. So, it is imperative in business English communication to have some degree of control over phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are done or used in higher order communication, advanced order communication. Of course, if you are learning basic English, basic usage, it is not, phrasal verbs may not help you or may not be of relevance to you, but when it comes to business English communication, yes, phrasal verbs, idiomatic language, these are important aspects. Remember, a phrasal verb is a combination of words, usually a verb plus preposition and adverb, or adverb. When used together, they take on a different meaning to that of the original verb. For example, stand is different from stand by or stand in. Check is different by check in. You check in and you check out, but you check something. You check your what date it is today, or check the time, but when you check in and check out of a hotel, you are arriving and departing from a hotel. Check in, check out. Yeah. So, the preposition makes all the difference in the world. Changing the preposition or adverb will change the meaning of the verb, as we just saw: looked up or looked down upon, or look into or look forward. So, look up is the act or process of looking up something, like look me up whenever you are in Chennai, next time you find me, try to contact me. When you look up something in on the internet, as I always keep telling you, often keep telling you, look this word up, look this up, which means the process of checking something or looking up something. When you look forward to something, you are happy about something, that something is going to happen. I am looking forward to your speech tomorrow. I am looking forward to my trip tomorrow. Okay? So, we look forward to something pleasant, something happy. A good way to learn phrasal verbs is in learning by context. When you come across one while reading a text, do note them down in complete sentence or paragraph, and these things will help you understand the different contexts in which phrasal verbs are used. This is a tip that I would like to give you for everything that is new to you or everything that you find challenging. Look it up, note down somewhere and keep going back to it. Remember, the same phrasal verb can have different meanings. For example, take in, take up, take off, and all these things are made or derived from the root word or root verb, that is take, but the preposition changes the meaning. Look at these examples. For example, you have pass out. Now, pass out is generally used as finishing your education. I passed out from the college in 1980, whatever. Okay, but that is not correct. You graduate from college. You do not say this is the passed out batch. Pass out means the teacher could pass out the answer papers, one could pass out in the heat. Then pass out means here. So, pass out the papers means distribute, and pass out in the heat means fainted, losing consciousness. But pass out, which is a very common mistake in Indian language, Indian English, is incorrectly, inappropriately used for graduating. The correct usage is I graduated out of college, not passed out of college. Passed out in the strictest sense is used for losing your consciousness. You pass out in the heat, you faint, you fainted in the heat. Another example is bring up. Parents bring up a child, and one could bring up an idea in a meeting, or do not bring that up again, meaning do not start that conversation again, I do not want to hear about that. Let us look at this flow chart or this ripple diagram. For example, you look at the main word look and then look at the way it can be used. Look up, look away from something. Look out for forged notes or forged notes or forged documents. Look ahead, look out, look ahead to plan a meeting. Look up to someone. If you have a lot of respect, I look up to my father, right? To look up something, not look up to something. So, that means to search for something or someone. Or look back, that is an act of memory. When I look back, I find that it was not such a bad idea. Now, we have just done a ripple diagram, and let us look at some of the ways in which phrasal verbs can be used. The media chose to look away as the administration grew intolerant. Here are some trends businesses should look out for next summer, and look ahead to these business organization milestones. Okay. So, these are some of the ways in which we can use. Now, let us look at the first exercise of the day. What I would like you to do is use the dictionary to find 3 or 4 more definitions of phrasal verbs with look. Make a ripple diagram of your own as we have done here, and write a sentence each illustrating the usage of these phrasal verbs. So, this is an exercise that would help you to improve your vocabulary or knowledge of phrasal verbs. Let us look at the answers here. 3, or I mean just giving some kind of clues. Three of the other phrasal verbs could include look down on, look forward to, look into. For example, she looks forward to meeting with the president. One should not look down on people employed in certain occupations. Madhav said he would look into the matter immediately. Please look up these words if you find or if you have any doubts. Now, let us look at the second exercise. Complete these sentences containing look in any way that seems appropriate to you. Students across the world look dash Stephen Hawking. The president looks dash catching up with his American counterpart on issues ranging from the crisis in the global market to combating climate changes. A look dash the world of venture capitalists. Some nations are looking dash at a post-growth economy. A look dash at the legacy of Henry Ford. And answers are: first, look up to. You look up to Stephen Hawking's, and the meaning is also given here, to admire, to when you look up to someone. Look forward to, the second answer. Look into, that is investigate, have an enquiry. Looking ahead, to think about the future, one must always look ahead. That is different from looking forward to. And look back, to think about the past or at certain events of the past. Here are some phrasal verbs that are commonly used in professional settings. So, draw up. See, this is not a definitive or an exhaustive list, but these are some of the phrasal verbs that can be of use. So, draw up, lay off, keep up, sort out, fill in, zero in, figure out, run by, take over, deal with. This is not the, as you would realize, this is not the kind of English that people generally use in their everyday, very common vernacular kind of language. However, in business communication, which is of a slightly advanced level, you do need to have some familiarity with phrasal verbs. And here are your answers. Draw up, to prepare a draft version of. Keep up, lay off, the act of terminating the employment of an employee or a workforce. The workers were laid off, right? Keep up, to continue or persist doing something. I cannot keep up with my siblings. Sometimes you do feel that you are unable to keep up with your classmates, you are not able to match pace with your classmates. Sort out is to find an answer or solution for something, and fill out is to add information such as your name or address in the empty space or an official document. And zero in is to aim something directly at someone or something. Sometimes you also say, I will zero in on this answer, that means I will mark this answer. Figure out is to discover or determine, I will try to figure out a solution. Run by or run past is to present as for evaluation. Get over is to recover. Deal with, to make business agreements with someone. From here we will move on to punctuations. Punctuations often change the meaning of a sentence. A wrongly or a misplaced punctuation mark can change the entire meaning of a sentence. If you have any doubts about how to use punctuations, the first and the most basic book would be High School English Grammar and Composition book by Wren and Martin. It is a definitive book. If you feel that you are very confused about grammar and punctuations, this is the go-to kind of a book. Here Wren and Martin define punctuation as the right use of putting in points or stops in writing. And that book lists out the principal stops like full stop or period, comma. Please look at the slide here, and the punctuation mark is given in the bracket, semicolon, colon, note of interrogation or question mark, note of exclamation or exclamation mark. as already said, use of punctuation creates a sense of clarity in sentences. If misplaced in a sentence or a text, they may lead to lot of confusion. Now, first let us just quickly recap or go through various punctuation marks. So, full stop or period, it is used to mark the end of a sentence, that is the most commonly used punctuation mark, that is the most popular use of the full stop at the end of a sentence, which is not a question or an exclamation mark. So, one generally uses a full stop to break sentences at the end of a complete or logical thought. For example, a futures contract is an agreement between two parties wherein the former agrees to purchase from the latter a fixed number of shares at a specific time in the future for a predetermined price. These details are agreed upon, etc., and here is a full stop at the end of the sentence. So, here the sentence rambles on and lacks break in between. It can be split into two complete sentences. Okay, so, that is how you should be able to do, and here you are given an the example. A futures contract is an agreement between two parties wherein the former agrees to purchase from the latter a fixed number of shares at a dash, etc., and these details are agreed upon when the transaction takes place, full stop again. So, two breaks in this sentence. I am sure you will agree that this second sentence or this second example makes much better reading. It is less confusing, less rambling, and makes a better sense. Full stops are also used to mark abbreviations. So, PhD, MA, MBBS and people's name TK and RK and all those. So, these we use, generally we use punctuation marks. Sometimes people decide to do away with the punctuation abbreviations, the abbreviation marks, and sometimes people decide to do away with these full stops, punctuation marks for marking abbreviations, which is also acceptable, so as long as you are consistent. Coming to the second important punctuation mark, that is a comma, and comma represents the shortest pause. It indicates to the reader that there is a pause. Sometimes we pause while we are speaking, we do not ramble on. So, you can perhaps imagine commas in the speaker's language, that perhaps the person is pausing and here is a comma. Remember, the general rule of thumb to follow while using the comma is the fewer the better. Do not overdo commas. Now, here are some basic rules. A comma should not link together two complete sentences by itself. The last date of EOI has been extended to this. Those interested in empanelment may send EOI in a sealed envelope to the head office. Here the sentence is actually two complete sentences. For example, the last date of EOI has been extended to this, and those interested in empanelment may send EOI in a sealed envelope to the head office. Punctuation, that is comma. Commas are used to link together two independent clauses. Clauses is this smallest grammatical unit expressing a complete idea. So, look at the sentences. If the markets are risky, comma, she will not invest. I love history, comma, but I also love geography. Commas are used in lists. For example, here you can look at the example, Dove, Knorr, Lux and Lipton are Unilever products. We have comma in places where it is used to tie together two sentences linked together by a coordinating conjunction. We have already done coordinating conjunctions in some of the earlier examples. So, let us look at this sentence. Bitcoins are the new rage of the financial world and governments are scrambling to make laws to govern it. So, linked together by a coordinating conjunction, and it is used to set apart non-restrictive elements. Non-restrictive elements add information to the sentence, but are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. One could remove them from a sentence and the sentence would still hold meaning. Mr. Warren Buffett, a busy man, eats his meals on the go. Mark graduated from Harvard, my alma mater. So, what are we doing? We are separating using a comma to set apart non-restrictive elements that add more information to the sentence, but are not too essential. Mark graduated from Harvard can be a complete sentence, but we are separating my alma mater using a comma. It is just an extra bit of information. Now, coming to the next punctuation mark, that is semicolon. Semicolons are used to separate clauses that are loosely related. For example, we live to achieve personal goals. Each individual's goals could be different. And then here is a piece on semicolons from the New York Times, the famous newspaper. But I can't agree that semicolons represent absolutely nothing. They represent for me anyway the pleasure in discovering that no piece of writing advice should ever be adopted mindlessly. And then it is also used to separate items in list which already contains commas. I met with Liza, the company CTO, Mark, the head of sales, and Meena, my new assistant. So, we are separating items from a list. So, that is also one way of using this punctuation mark. And colon introduces a quotation. Megha kept saying, I really want a cat. You can also use a comma here, but colon can also be used. It was Shakespeare who said, if music be the food of love, play on. So, look at the use of colon, you can't be using semicolon here. Colon is also used to indicate examples or lists. Read the following and then you use a colon. There are often two choices before you. So, there is a colon to run away or to fight it out. The fundraisers is scheduled to be held across 3 cities, Venice, Paris and Barcelona. Colon is also used between sentences that are grammatically independent, but closely connected. You can come pick me up now, I am feeling much better. And then question mark. Question mark is used instead of a full stop after a direct question. So, there has to be a direct question. So, the example I gave at the beginning of this, it is not a direct question. I asked Professor John if I could. So, that sentence is not a direct question, it will end with a full stop, not a question mark. Now, look at the way question marks are used. When are the samples ready? Should I stay or should I go? So, these are direct questions. They require a punctuation mark, that is a question mark. You should understand that since question mark replaces the full stop at the end of a sentence, you should capitalize the word that follows it. So, could you come with me? Question mark, and there is an emergency at work. So, just like a full stop, you have a capital, the capital word that follows it. Do not use a question mark after the end of an indirect question. I wonder if the market would open early today. So, there is no question mark here. Here is an exercise for you. Use the appropriate punctuation marks in the following sentences. The source is given at the bottom. Climate breakdown, soil loss, the collapse of habitats and species, the sea of plastic, all are driven by rising consumption. How, in a world in which everyone is supposed to aspire to high incomes, can we avoid turning the earth on which all prosperity depends into a dust ball? 30 years ago, it was ridiculous to buy bottled water, where tap water is clean and abundant today. Worldwide, we use 1 million plastic bottles a minute. But they are all proxies for the real issue, perpetual growth on a planet that is not growing. Look and pay attention to the fact how lack of punctuation marks sort of distort and sort of haze the meanings of these sentences. The answer, here are the answers: climate breakdown, comma, soil loss, the collapse of habitats and species, comma, the sea of plastic. It's a list. All are driven by rising consumption, full stop. Second sentence, how, comma, in a world in which everyone is supposed to aspire to higher incomes, can we avoid turning the earth, comma, on which all prosperity depends, into a dust ball, full stop. 30 years ago, comma, it was ridiculous to buy bottled water, comma, where tap water is clean and abundant, full stop. Today worldwide, we use 1 million plastic bottles a minute, full stop. And last one, you have to have a capital, because it begins, the sentence begins with a capital letter. So, but they are all proxies for the real issue, colon, perpetual growth on a planet that is not growing. From here we move on to the next topic, types of sentences, simple, compound and complex sentences. Now remember, a good way of writing involves varying sentences in the text. There are 3 kinds of sentences: simple, complex and compound. A good writing should have a mix of all these types. Every sentence has 2 parts. We have already done some of this in our earlier classes. You have a subject, you have verb, you have predicate. The subject part which names a person or thing, predicate the part which tells something about the person or a thing. For example, the house is painted yellow. So, you know which is the subject and which is the predicate. All roads lead to Rome. Now, simple, compound and complex sentences, how do we define them? A simple sentence has only one subject and one predicate. The dog ran, the teacher spoke, the teacher corrected the writing papers. Zainab and Pauline ate gulab jamun. A simple sentence can also be called as an independent clause. Therefore, these sentences can be part of either compound or complex sentences, which also can be a complete sentence in itself. A compound sentence is a sentence made up of 2 independent clauses linked together by a coordinating conjunction, such as and, for, etc. Also, but. Now, if you look at examples of compound sentences, here are some sentences for you. Irene wanted to reach on time, but the train was late. The sun hadn't set and we could see our way. So, these are compound sentences. 2 sections are joined together using a coordinating conjunction, and both parts of the sentence make complete sentence meaning by themselves. A complex sentence, on the other hand, is made of an independent clause and one or more dependent clause. A dependent clause lacks one of the elements that would make it a complete sentence. So, here are some examples. For example, Ganesh arrived at the station after his friends had left. Here in this sentence, the dependent clause is after his friends had left, which would not stand alone as a complete sentence. And when we buy the shares, this is another example, we need to know that prices fluctuate in the short term. So, when we buy the shares, this is not a complete sentence by itself. And in next exercise, identify the following sentences, whether they are simple, compound or complex. So, we start first. Maida tried hard to win the game. Second, when we buy Irene's birthday cake, we need to make sure it's chocolate. Third, I cook and Madhav sets the table. Fourth, if you like the idea, pursue the client. Fifth, Marin ran errands for the Krishnan family. Sixth, since she left the house has been silent. We need to know, we need to identify the category of the type of sentences these are. And here are your answers. First simple, second complex, third compound, fourth complex, 5 simple, 6 complex. And here are your references. If you need to know more of these topics, then these are the books that you can refer to. Thank you very much.